Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. I'm testing out some new equipment while I talk about sexual abuse and culture. So I want to check the sound to see what my face looks like, all of that kind of stuff. Okay, great. It looks all right. It looks all right. So for those who've never seen me live and you're seeing me for the first time, my name is Joanna Daniel. I am a counselor and I also run I'm going to call it a ministry online called Wounds to Scars, where we work with adult survivors of childhood trauma and abuse. We do that through conferences, retreats, and courses. And our next retreat will be online, a few people offline, in person, and it will be in November 26th to 28th. And the details are on our website at woundstoscars.com. So today I want to talk about sexual abuse and culture. I have a webinar that's coming up the 16th of September, and this is for if you've experienced sexual abuse or if you're a social worker, a therapist, or a counselor, and you want to understand the nuances that is involved in sexual abuse and culture and how to help people, help to women unravel shame, separate the shame that is attached to abuse and the shame that is attached to, racism and other cultural other things, then you are invited to this webinar. I'm going to put the details below the video or above the video. So sexual abuse and culture, let's unravel some of the things about it this morning. Now, different cultures, sexual abuse is taboo. That's one. Not a lot of people talk about it. We don't like to talk about it. It's and I probably should put some warning on this video as well. It's a very difficult subject to talk about. It's uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable mostly because we don't talk about it. So the thing that we don't talk about becomes uncomfortable because we don't talk about it. So I want us to be able to, at least in our community, in Wounds to Scars community, to normalize that a little bit, to talk about it, to not make anything taboo. Because one of the things that we do know is that it's in our homes. It's the big elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. And because it's so taboo, in secrecy and silence, that's where perpetrators thrive. They really depend on silence and secrecy. They really depend on victims' shame. Shame is one of the big things that keeps us silent, and we don't share our story. Some people is so ashamed they won't go to counseling. There are whole families where this thing is happening in, where nobody will go to counseling because of shame. So I understand shame. I understand why it might be crippling, and I understand why it will keep people from getting support. But I want to put shame in a cultural context today. And just for you that are listening, and if you've experienced sexual abuse, why you might struggle to get help, or even, yeah, and maybe I'll do this in another video. What is abuse and what is sexual abuse, and how do I name it, and what are the things that will, how can I get help? So that's for another time though. But some of the things that will prevent us from getting help, and how shame is compounded when we've experienced sexual abuse from a cultural perspective. So I'm from Jamaica, and growing up there, I didn't have a name for sexual abuse. It wasn't called that. So women who experience sexual abuse, now that I'm as an adult, I'm looking back and I'm reflecting, women were blamed. Girls are called names and are given the responsibility of keeping themselves safe and also protecting perpetrators from not harming them. So women, victims, have all the responsibility. Now, when you're growing up, and I've written about this on my website a few years ago about breaking the silence. When you're growing up in that environment and you experience sexual abuse, because of the shame that's already around, and you feel it really, and you don't have a name to say what happened to you. That's why lots of people, lots of children don't speak. They remain silent. And so helping somebody to heal mean unraveling all of that shame. It's a different layer. It's a different type of self-blame, because it's so deeply embedded in culture, in the view of self, in the way you see yourself and think about yourself. And sometimes they are even women who blame victims, like, she shouldn't have done that. If she hadn't worn that, if she hadn't gone that place, why did you do that? You shouldn't have gone out with him. There's so many ways that we have learned so much. It's funny. It's really odd, isn't it, that we don't have a language. When I was growing up anyway, I didn't have a name to say sexual abuse, but I knew how to talk about the victims. So that's really funny, isn't it? So we don't often have the skills to discuss it and to say what has happened and to make the decision to go to counseling and get help. But we have words to describe victims, and we have words to speak poorly of women, and we have words to label um women, and we're not given tools in the other direction. Now, there's also a part of culture that's really damaging, that really is damaging for women, and also perpetrates shame. It's when you're forced almost to still be respectful, to still told that you have to honor perpetrators, especially if they're male authority figures in your life. Um, and when this happens, it's so deeply harmful, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. And this conversation, of course, will be carried on in the webinar on Thursday. But I want us to think through this, and I want you to think through it. If you're here and you've experienced sexual abuse, and you're seeing the cultural layers that have prevented you from getting support, I want you to know that you're not to blame. You're not to blame for any of it. If you are a parent here that have ignored what somebody said, given them responsibility for what has happened, you need to apologize. And I have to add that. If you are a clinician, somebody who works with people who experience sexual abuse, and you're not from Afro-Caribbean culture, I want you to think about when this woman comes into therapy to deal with sexual abuse, I want you to think about her story. And I want you to um, be curious about her story. Curiosity is really good. Be curious about her story and give her an opportunity to reflect on all the layers that is involved in her story. Because when you are forced to have relationship with people that have hurt you, that can be deeply harmful. And we know that people who experience sexual abuse, some of the things that happen as a result is, other mental health problems like depression and anxiety and PTSD. But I can imagine how this is compounded when you are having to maintain contact with somebody who you do not is harmful to you, is continually hurting you. In certain cultures, abuse is covered, abuse is hidden. The mental health that's connected to it is hidden, it's covered, it's not acknowledged. And so victims suffer and endure longer. And also, the mental health that comes as a result of is also covered. I have to touch this piece because I think it's relevant, and it's the religious piece, where that is another layer on top of the culture. So it's the abuse, it's culture, and then there's the religious piece. And I work from a Christian perspective. If you've been in this community long enough, you know that. But I have to put this piece because I believe that it also compounds the shame, and it compounds the problems a lot of times that victims struggle as they're processing their trauma. Because the piece that really it becomes problematic is the one around forgiveness. Now, I'm a proponent of forgiveness in people's time when they've worked through. I believe it's a fruit of healing and not the means to heal for a lot of people. I believe for many, many people, they have to process the pain first before they're able to come to the place where where they can forgive. I believe that's honest. And I believe God loves honesty, and he wants us to be honest and real with him. But when somebody also from a cultural perspective is forced to forgive a perpetrator and to pretend that the abuse hasn't happened and expose themselves for more harm, what we're doing is exposing people to long-term trauma long-term mental health problems that sometimes takes years to unravel and to heal. So we have to, one of the things that we struggle with sometimes from our cultural context is to listen to the pain, to validate the story, to believe the story, and to protect and keep people safe. We really need to learn more and grow through that experience and learn how to do that in a better way. Really, no other word for it. So we need to be able to do that. We need to be able to allow people to tell their story and to live their story and to heal from their story and to protect them at all costs, to protect them come what may. So I was speaking last weekend, Saturday, and somebody asked a question around boundaries. When I say protect people at all costs, protecting victims might mean, creating distance, cutting people off. They're not safe. They have no remorse. They don't take responsibility, and they are not stopping. And when we don't take steps to protect people, we expose more people to harm. So I was speaking on Saturday, and somebody said, well, you need to be careful how you say to cut people off. Now, I didn't use those words. Those were her words. We have to be careful how we say to cut people off because, as Christians, we have to learn how to forgive, paraphrasing the statement. And of course we do. But when people are being put in harm's way, we have to we have a duty to protect people and to keep them safe. And I believe as Christians, that duty is even more urgent for us. We have that duty more than anybody else to protect and keep people safe. We are not protecting people when we are forcing victims to forgive and restore relationships that are harmful. We have to let people walk their journey of healing, and we have to love perpetrators enough to hand them over to the police, to visit them in prison, to allow the legal system to do what it does. We have to love people enough to know that you are not safe, and because you're not a safe person, we have to protect these people over here. And that's where we fail a lot of times, culturally and from a religious perspective. We fail in that regard a lot. We fail victims quite a lot when we don't believe their story and we don't take measures to protect them. We fail children when we don't believe their stories and we don't take measures to protect them. When we're forcing them to have relationships with people that are harmful. When we're forcing them to be in situations that they really need to leave. When we, as the adult in those situations, need to take necessary steps to protect and to keep people safe. Now, if you do not know how to do this, you are leading a church, you are a parent, and you don't know how to protect and to keep the people that are in your care safe, then this webinar, you should definitely attend this webinar. You really should attend, because it's really going to teach you some of the layers and the nuances around abuse, the shame that people walk with, and how to protect them, and how to be a safe space for people to come, so that people can begin to heal. You really need to be there. So that's what I wanted to come and talk about today. I also wanted to say culturally that counseling is okay, therapy is okay, that we need to make it safe and make it okay for people to feel okay to access support and need to heal. I want to say to you, if you've experienced sexual abuse, that healing is necessary, healing is achievable, and if you haven't started, you should probably start. Find a really good counselor. You can search for somebody that's in your area, negotiate with them, ask for what you need, and go and start your journey of healing. It's really important. Okay. So that's what I wanted to come and talk about today. I'm going to do another one, perhaps over the weekend, around what is abuse and what does it feel like? How do we name it? And work through the stages of owning it, owning what it was, what has happened, so that you can be free. We're all about freedom, healing, so that you can live a rich and full and abundant life that is your birthright. Take care and have a great day.